with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, November 5th, 2018. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we are less than 24 hours away from the final day of voting for the midterm elections. And early voting has broken records across the country, but doesn't mean anything. Meanwhile, House Republicans are running from Trump, but does that mean anything? Lastly, Trump's full-on racist gambit will provide us a brief moment of clarity at the end of this week. We will get a sense of just where this country is at. And meanwhile, in Georgia, Secretary of State Kemp pulling out all the banana Republican stops, while a federal judge in Texas who heard the ACA case, which could essentially destroy the protections that we have against pre-existing conditions and rescission and lifetime caps. Is he sitting on his verdict until after the election? Today marks U.S.-Iran sanctions kicking in as the EU looks for a workaround. And a shooter in Tallahassee who killed 2 women was a YouTube racist incel YouTuber. Conservatives scammed for $150,000. Well, not quite, but certainly worth a smile. And the Supreme Court to hear a case that could very well nuke separation of church and state. And lastly, law-breaking corporations getting billions of dollars worth of fines punted by the Trump administration. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. So forgive us for the late start. We have some technical difficulties today, and but we will get through it. I was at a wedding over the weekend, and not a particularly liberal crew of folks, but everybody seemed to be, I just don't remember more people being more invested in an election than these midterms. A lot of people telling me they were headed to, well, really across the country to get out and door knock. So I found that very encouraging. I just don't meet that many people who you just don't. I mean, in the course of years doing this, I just have never seen so many people who are this active. Hard to know whether it's going to make a difference. I mean, it's very difficult to anticipate. We know what the polls say. We see some tightening in the generic ballot, depending on which poll, but I think like the aggregate of all of those is somewhere around 7%. We have said quite often that there was a sense that you need about 9% to overcome a lot of the gerrymandering in many of these districts across the country. But again, predicting who is going to be in the electorate is the biggest challenge for pollsters. And, Friday night I was on Hayes' program again, and Charlie Cook was on beforehand, and he was saying that Republican consultants, seem worried. And he made the point that, look, the national polls were accurate in 2016. It's just that there were a couple of state polls that were inaccurate. Well, really, we don't even have a national election this time around. So these polls are smaller in many cases. When you're doing a smaller district, now theoretically you should be able to get it right, but there's less resources put into those type of things. So we just don't know is the bottom line. What we do know is that more than 34 million people have already cast their ballots early or by absentee. That is a 50% increase over the total number of votes, early votes cast in the 2014 midterm elections. So we're more than 50% increase. I imagine still, this piece is from a day or so ago, and I imagine numbers are still coming in. And, of course, there's early voting today in some places. Turnout is up amongst all age cohorts, amongst all racial groups and educational categories. Older voters still make up a disproportionately large segment of the electorate, but that's because they started with a larger portion of the electorate in terms of engaging. However, the difference between the sort of the rate of increase in early voting amongst young people versus old people is encouraging if you believe that young people who are coming out early are going to vote for Democrats. Now, there's reason to believe that, but we'll see. Among voters aged 18 to 29, turnout is up in 39 of 41 states for which data is available. For voters 30 to 39, turnout is up in all 41 states where data is available. So it appears that the 2018 electorate will be slightly younger, or I should say significantly younger, and more diverse than the electorate that voted 4 years ago. There's reason to believe that that is encouraging for people who want more Democratic members of Congress. In Texas, there is data that shows that more than 420,000 people have voted this year for the first time. That's 4 times higher than the number of first-time voters who cast a ballot in 2014. That's pretty stunning. Regardless of who those people are, that's pretty stunning that you have 4 times the amount of first-time voters in a midterm election. Voters between the ages of 18 and 39 made up a little less than a quarter of the total Texas early vote. 4 years ago, those voters made up just 13% of the electorate. Now, the rate, I just want to be clear on what we're saying here. So in 2014, they were just 13% of the entire electorate. Presumably, we don't know where their early voting was, so we can't make that apples to apples comparison. But at least in the context of early voting, they have a higher percentage of voting. This is the thing you got to ask yourself that we don't know yet is, do these early voters constitute people who wouldn't otherwise have voted? Or are they simply cannibalizing what the turnout will be on Tuesday? We don't know. We won't know until Wednesday. But in Arizona, young voters have grown to 17% of the electorate, up from 10% in 2014. The number of Hispanic voters casting early ballots doubled, while the share of the electorate that is white is down 3.5 percentage points The number of infrequent and new voters who cast ballots this year have both more than doubled. So
these are good.
If you're going to ask for numbers, for early voting numbers, these are the numbers you'd want to look at. This is what you want. They don't necessarily mean anything, but they're an absence of bad news, which is, arguably good news. In Georgia, voters between the ages of 18 and 39 account for more than 21% of the early vote. That's almost up 10 percentage points from 2014. Young voters in Nevada, Ohio, Tennessee, and Wisconsin have also grown dramatically as a share of the electorate. And why this is important is, let me read down what NBC News. Democrats have a 7-point advantage over Republicans in the final national NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. So for those people who want a Democratic-controlled Congress, not surprising, 94% of Democrats do. 3% of Democrats want a Republican-controlled Congress. Who knows? African Americans, 84% want a democratically controlled Congress. 8% want a Republican-controlled Congress.
They got it. They're being silenced.
Right.
No one can hear them.
I guess it's not Blexit, it's blows it or whatever. I don't know. Latinos, 57% to 29%. 18 to 34-year-olds, 57% to 34%. So you get a big chunk of people who just don't know. White with a college degree, 56% versus 37%. Women, 55% to 37%. That's a pretty substantial gender gap. Seniors, 54% to 40% want a democratically controlled Congress. Overall, all likely voters, and that's the difficulty that you have, is that 50% versus 43%. We don't, all likely voters. We just don't know. Whites, 44% want a democratically controlled Congress, and 50% want a Republican-controlled Congress. The Republican Party is a party that practices identity politics. 95% of their support comes from white people.
Get those white guys. Get them. Get them.
There is the Democratic Party, obviously, has a far more diverse base of support. White people with no college degree, 60%. It's the highest cohort, want Republicans to win. 36% want the Democrats. Independents, 35% want a democratically controlled Congress. 23% want a Republican-controlled Congress. And 91% of Republicans. So those numbers are relevant insofar as if you project those numbers, and you can't really do this, you can do it to give you a semblance, but if you project those breakdowns upon the data that we do know about who have voted early, then that looks good for Democrats. But I want to remind you, in 2016, early voting suggested Democratic strength and enthusiasm in Florida. Do you remember there was some report a week before in Florida? It was like, this is 98% of, this is going to be a landslide in Florida. And it turned out not to be a landslide for Hillary Clinton.
Didn't work out that way.
No. But we saw enthusiasm in Florida, North Carolina, and Nevada. In the end, Clinton only carried Nevada. So this is my way of saying everything I've been saying has been somewhat masturbatory, and for that I apologize. But it's important to, look, these are going to be important points going forward. At the very least, this is what you can be sure of. The work that has gone in to get people to the polls early has paid off in getting people to the polls early. To what extent that's going to mean in terms of Congress, we don't know yet. Folks, do you love the thrill of an escape room? Looking for clues and solving puzzles? Well, now you can bring the mystery home with Hunt a Killer. Rob, I think you might like this. Hunt a Killer is a monthly subscription where you become a detective immersed in a murder mystery. Each month, a fictional serial killer will send you cryptic clues, objects, and letters that you can actually use to solve the crime in real time. It's so interactive that it feels real. You can play it solo, on a date, on a game night with friends, or you can join their online community, work with other people who are at the same point in the story as you are. I've started this with Mila and I.
How's it going?
She seems to be pretty excited about it.
Cool.
We're waiting for clues. Anything if I can just like get her off her phone on Instagram.
How's it going to be when you say Dad killed Seth Rich?
That's right. Well, I can't tell her that.
Okay.
But right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority for 10% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so hurry to take advantage of this offer. huntakiller.com/majority for 10% off your first box. huntakiller.com/majority. Check it out, folks. All right, let's. One of the things that I think this election is going to. I mean, look, we're going to have a big problem with this, and I think we knew this in after 2016. But we're going to have a big problem with increasingly a ill-informed public, right? And there's two dynamics that are clearly in effect during this midterm. One is Donald Trump is trying to motivate his base, and it does seem to be working, to come out and vote by scaring them with notions of a caravan of who knows how many hundreds it could be people by the time they get to the border. But they are now on foot over a month away traveling on foot. There are now 5,200 U.S. military personnel with helicopters and barbed wire that are, I guess, ostensibly waiting for them, spending hundreds of millions of dollars, it's anticipated. This little kabuki theater is going to cost.
Should have let me have the parade.
There you go. We should have let him have the parade. But, and I'm telling you this right now, you're not going to hear much about this after Tuesday because it's just not going to have the salience. Maybe at one point Trump will announce, like, we scared him off. We scared him off, so we're bringing the military home. One of the dynamics is going to be what it tells us about this country in terms of their motivation based upon their disdain for brown people. The other thing is have Republican candidates successfully run from the fact that the Republican Party wants to destroy the good stuff in the Affordable Care Act Patient Protection Bill. I have said many times, the best parts of the ACA PPI were the patient protection initiatives. That is, pre-existing conditions, you cannot be denied insurance, and you cannot be overcharged for insurance as a way of denying it. You cannot have lifetime caps. You can't have yearly caps. You can't have rescission. In other words, you have health insurance that's taken away when you need it. You're under 26. You can be on your parents' programs. There are certain 10 essential benefits that health insurance must provide to actually constitute insurance. That's being undercut by the garbage that Trump is giving waivers for. But nevertheless, and like I said, there is a Republican-led lawsuit against the U.S. government, which the DOJ has argued in favor of, as opposed to defending against. that would do away with all this. In the meantime, you have Republican congresspeople, all of whom voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act and get rid of those things, and now they're trying to pretend that they didn't. In states, Republican-controlled states, you had Republican leadership denying the expansion of Medicaid. Remember, the first year out, that expansion of Medicaid is $0 it costs the states. Down the road, it can cost up to 10% of the cost goes to the states. Here is a clip of a debate. This happened last night or this weekend? Thursday or Friday of last week in Ohio's 12th district. Danny O'Connor is the Democrat running. Troy Balderson is the Republican. Is Balderson a sitting? He's not a sitting congressman, is he? But listen to Danny O'Connor. I have a feeling this might be a district that is not flipped, but a one where we've had resignation. But here it is.
Do you also oppose Medicaid expansion? Because 1 in every 3 people in Muskingum County are on Medicaid. So that means if you're watching at home tonight, look to your right and look to your left. Troy Balderson doesn't want one of you to have health care. You need that health care. We need that health care to ensure that we can fight back against opioids. Folks with breast cancer need that health care so that they can live to see their grandkids. People who work hard, who pay their taxes, who do everything right, need to have health care so that they can live a happy, healthy, and safe life. But when you have folks like Troy Balderson who want to take that health care away, you can't do that. When I'm in Congress, I'll fight for you. I'll fight to make sure that your pre-existing conditions are covered. I'll fight to safeguard Medicaid expansion because I know what it means to people here in Zanesville.
Danny, when we did the state budget, and we look at everything, and I served on the Finance Committee when we did this, over 50% of our state budget is Medicaid. So what do? We go in and we look at it. There are other ways. There's reform methods. In the state legislature, we have reformed Medicaid. We have looked at it. We have addressed issues. We have saved $200 million in the last 3 GAs working on Medicaid and making costs come down.
Well, if that's how much a life is worth from someone who doesn't have health care access.
You can still provide health care. This is not about taking
1 in every 3
away.
people in Muskingum County are on Medicaid.
I want health care for everybody.
1 in every 3,
I want health care for everybody. I want people to have access to
We need more compassion in government for working people.
And we can do that.
Then why do you want to throw people off their health care?
I'm not going to throw them off their health care.
You just said you oppose Medicaid expansion.
That's not throwing them off their that is not throwing them off their health care.
If they don't have Medicaid, where are they going to go?
That is not throwing them off their health care. We have fairly qualified health centers in this community.
Well, you said counties don't even have doctors.
Danny, there are some counties out there that don't.
No, there aren't. If you're watching this tonight, just Google it.
The accessibility.
Every county in your old Senate district has a doctor. All you got to do is go on Google, and you'll find them.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, pause it. So this guy...
He cedered it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he is the sitting representative in Ohio's 12th because Tiberi resigned, and he was elected, I think, just this in this August, just to fill, in the special election, to fill his seat. But he was a former, Troy Balderson was a former state rep. And the bottom line is, if you're going to throw people off their Medicaid and you don't have a plan to provide them with some other type of health insurance, I don't know where you're going to get the money from if it's not this federal program that's going to come in and pay for it. But they have had to adopt this position. And now they find themselves in this rather unenviable position where they thought for 7 years, as the Republicans were voting to crash the ACA, and it was just it was a mantra, and now it's clear that they have no other plan. The only thing they can say is, generically speaking, I don't want people to lose their health care, but in terms of everything I'm proposing, it's for people to lose their health care. So they have a bit of a problem, and the best they can do is just sort of smile and look. You
can almost smell him anxiety sweating.
And these two ran against each other in August in that special election, and apparently O'Connor lost by something like 1,500 votes out of 200,000 votes. So,
do we just want to take the last 30 seconds of this again?
yeah, let's just do that because it's and I don't even know in August if this exchange had the resonance it has now, because we're seeing this across the country where, you know, in Arizona, for instance, where the Republican is just like, can't, you know, literally lying about the votes that she took and just hoping that the people hearing, like the reporters say, but you took that vote.
And then whining to Sean Hannity about it.
Right.
They're kicking my ass for it.
Exactly.
And we can do
Then
that.
why do you want to throw people off their health care?
I'm not going to throw them off their health care.
You just said you oppose Medicaid expansion.
That's not throwing them off their
That is
not throwing them off their health care.
If they don't have Medicaid, where are they going to go?
That is not throwing them off their health care. We have fairly qualified health centers in this community.
Well, you said counties don't even have doctors.
Danny, there are some counties out there that don't.
No, there aren't. If you're watching this tonight, just Google it.
The accessibility.
Every county in your old Senate district has a doctor. All you got to do is go on Google, and you'll find them.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on, unless you have something to add, Congressman Balderson.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, wow. He even got the disappointed principal treatment from the moderator.
Right.
That cut
that's
was
brutal.
so comical.
You got anything else you'd like to add? You've been totally humiliated. You're in a sweat now. Your lies are so transparent and embarrassing where even the liberal shows that will mock you later for this will be uncomfortable watching you.
Right.
Is there any attempt you'd like to make at a recovery here? I'm assuming no, because that was pathetic. Next.
Damn it.
The cut back to the moderator seemed like something out of Vic Berger, actually.
Oh, definitely. That was real life. Maybe the camera guy watches Vic Berger videos.
But that's the dynamic that we're seeing across the country. I mean, the other dynamic is that you have like some candidates who are literally saying, the Republicans saying like that the Democrat is more aligned with Trump than they are. But that is the dynamic that's happening. For the most part, Democrats are leaning on healthcare as a major talking point. And
good. That's what they should have been doing all along.
Well, I mean, I think that's what they've been doing in these races.
Shut up.
There's a lot of evidence that that's the case. Meanwhile, in Georgia, and this is, I think, for me, some of the two most important, well, I shouldn't say that, but Georgia and Florida are going to be huge. And there's another race, Kara Eastman running in Nebraska. It looks like it is going to be out of reach for her. She was facing a huge amount of Republican money that came in late, and the Democrats just did not step up to help her. Part of that is it's Omaha, Nebraska, and so on paper anyways, you wouldn't want to put a lot of money in. Another part of that, I think, is she's running in Nebraska not as a center, as a moderate, but rather as a full-throated progressive. And I think there may be institutional money that doesn't feel so comfortable with that. If someone wins in Omaha with that kind of platform, it creates pressure points all along the line for more moderate and corporate friendly Democrats. But we shall see what happens in the coming days. Meanwhile, in Georgia, Brian Kemp, who is the Secretary of State, who has been on a relentless mission to disenfranchise voters, in the waning days when the story comes out that their own Secretary of State website is insecure in terms of allowing for voter data to leak out. This is what Kemp's job is. His response to this is by claiming that the Democrats have tried to hack it. I mean, it's really basically what he's trying to do is deflect from the fact that he can't even do his job properly. So here was Stacey Abrams' response.
Are you concerned these racist appeals are going to work?
What I'm concerned about is that his overarching architecture of voter suppression, of ostracization, of demeaning and dehumanizing people, that can cause people to think that their votes don't count, which is why we've been so aggressive about telling people the best antidote to his antics is to actually turn out and engage. And we've seen unprecedented voter turnout because people understand that education and jobs and access to affordable health care are on the ballot this year, and that I'm the only candidate with a comprehensive plan for how we move our state forward together.
So there it is. I mean, she's just maintaining the high road. And
I like the phrase
anecdote to his antics.
Right.
That's good. He's like this racist kid, incompetent. And I'll deal with his antics by beating him.
Apparently, part of what she's responding to is that there's a robocall going out in Georgia that sounds like this. This is the magical Negro, Oprah Winfrey, asking you to make my fellow Negress, Stacey Abrams, governor of Georgia. Then it spews nearly 60 seconds of racism coupled with a dash of anti-Semitism. Here is the audio of the robocall going out in support of Kemp in Georgia. And, you know, the table's been set for this type of stuff. So who knows?
Oprah Winfrey. This is the magical Negro, Oprah Winfrey, asking you to make my fellow Negress, Stacey Abrams, the governor of Georgia. Years ago, the Jews who owned the American media saw something in me, the ability to trick dumb white women into thinking I was like them, and to do, read, and think what I told them to. I see that same potential in Stacey Abrams. Where others see a poor man's Aunt Jemima, I see someone white women can be tricked into voting for, especially the fat ones. And so I promise that every single person who votes for Stacey Abrams, you're going to get a new car. So you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. Everybody gets a car. And as far as the race-aware whites who are in the way, don't worry about them. Like I said in that famous interview in 2013, white racists just have to die. This message paid for by theroadtopower.com.
There you go.
God.
Yeah, roadtopower.com apparently is an anti-Semitic video podcasting website. So,
apparently Brian Kemp has a history of falsely accusing opposing campaigns of hacks. He claimed that the Obama administration tried to hack him in 2016, and he's sort of wheeled this out in several other races. So this is his go-to.
And we should add, no evidence provided.
Never any evidence.
Who needs evidence? Evidence, schmevidence, folks. Seriously. Here is this I found a little bit disturbing in terms of what we're seeing from Donald Trump. Here's Morning Joe. Now, this is not from the 2016 election, right? This isn't from 2015. This is from today, November 5th, 2018. I would put this in the file information we probably should have known earlier if you were in a position to have it as a reporter.
And, you know, that's what's so interesting, again, not talking about the economy, but talking about imaginary walls and imaginary caravans, is that Donald Trump already had those voters locked down. If you like Donald Trump because he was racially insensitive and he said these outrageous things, you already had those people.
Pause it for 1 second.
It's the swing.
Pause it 1 second. There's racially insensitive, I think, is soft pedaling things just a little bit with Donald Trump. And aside from that, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Donald Trump may have had those people, but Donald Trump talking about it and reaching those people drives them to the polls more, right? I mean, we see it in terms of the rise in hate incidents in the Trump era. And we see it in the polling, frankly, that the more he talks about this, the more people are inspired to go to the polls. So that analysis is wrong on the part of Scarborough. It's not like he had, and Scarborough's going to go on to say, like, he could have pivoted. He could have pivoted and done the good things that that a Republican can do. But the fact is no, I don't think so. I think Trump has got a strategy, and this is the strategy, and you can't convolute it. Every time he's talking about fiscal discipline or whatever BS that Scarborough's going to say, is a time where he's not reminding people that there are hordes of brown people coming to attack them.
Too wonky. Don't be too wonky.
Exactly.
Keep it simple.
But so continue.
Those people. It's the swing voters in the suburbs that might have been persuaded if this entire campaign had been about, hey, you know what? My taxes have been cut. Yeah. Regulations are being cut. The economy is still growing well. We're still in the middle of the Obama recovery. Not as big as the Obama recovery, but it's still, Donald Trump has not completely destroyed the Obama recovery. And they would think that, and they'd get a lot more votes. But Donald Trump has reminded them of Charlottesville every day over the last couple of weeks. And what does that do? That inspires Democrats, independents, moderate Republicans, suburban Republicans to vote Democratic.
Well, it may, but I also just say we confronted him about the birtherism. We said it's bad, it's wrong, and he said in a low voice, I know it's bad, but it works. Racism, in his mind, works.
Well, pause it for 1 second. That's what we call in journalism is burying the lead. I would say, in fact, they buried the lead by at least 2 years. I mean, when Donald Trump was talking about birtherism, my guess is it was during the presidency of Barack Obama. And you'll recall these two guys, with all due respect, spent a lot of time supportive of Donald Trump early on until they found out what a bad guy he was. But I wonder if it was around the time that he said, yeah, I know, but it works. I got the feeling that probably preceded that time. So maybe, you recall when Joe Scarborough at one point had said, like, he seemed like he was in on the joke. And now he doesn't. The joke being stoking racial animus, incidentally.
We thought it was like Dice Clay, and it was a character he was doing, which people could appreciate on a certain ironic level.
Right.
Turns out, but then he became the character. And that's really when Dice's material went downhill.
I just hope the millions of people who watch our show were in on the joke as well.
That's why you've got to buy a membership to actually get all the joke material.
You see Meek and I in West Hempstead next week for $200.
I really
We'll make clear that this is ironic.
I really do think that if you're a reporter and you've had that conversation and you feel comfortable saying it at any time on television, you probably should have said it on television right around the time you heard it.
No, but then he would have said stuff to us anymore.
It's off the record.
Yeah,
Didn't want to burn.
Yeah,
well, I mean, that's my point. Is it off the record? Well, then you probably shouldn't have said it today.
And I don't know that she needed to qualify it with, in his mind, it works at this point in time. I'm pretty sure it's been proven that it works.
It's interesting because she was disagreeing with Joe, kind of the point we make, because Joe's like, these suburban Republicans are being turned off.
That's
like, no,
right.
that's like a lot of racism there. Like, they're liking this stuff.
I mean...
Yeah, I had to check the year on that clip.
Right. I mean, I think there's evidence that it's turning off some suburban Republican voters.
Like the LeBron guy.
Right. But the bottom line is you don't know. I mean, like, how do they not make that part of their coverage when it was relevant?
because it was fun.
Right.
And it was ironic, and it was.
And it was pain.
Yeah, it got
That was
the ratings.
it was really a rhetorical question.
Yeah, it was right.
It was, I know exactly how they did it.
Yeah.
They wanted to maintain access, and they were willing to whatever.
He's not going to win anyway.
Yeah.
He'll be great when he wins.
You remember the LeBron guy? He was the CNN focus group, and he's like, he's racist. He was the guy who voted for Trump in 2016, and whoever, Camarado or one of those people was hosting, she's like, what makes you say that now? Kind of with a little subtext of like, dude, what?
Where have you been?
And he goes, well, he called LeBron stupid. It's King James.
He's clearly the smartest black person.
Yeah, right. LeBron is pretty smart.
Lastly, as part of this campaign that Donald Trump is running, and it's not hard to find reports that Republican congresspeople, particularly ones in trouble, are upset that Donald Trump has made this election about him so much, and they can't escape this. And one of the things Trump has done is made this about the media. Here he is. I mean, this is almost nonsensical in a way. But here is, and the amazing thing is, I've seen reports. I think I was just reading someone's Twitter thread who went out, interviewed people at the last rally, and they were all saying similar things. Like, the media is mistreating Donald Trump. They've got to treat him. They've got to give him encouragement to be the best he can be instead of covering him so critically.
Exactly.
Right? And here is Donald Trump on his way to West Virginia for a rally over the weekend. Is that over the weekend or is this today? Over the weekend. Friday. Saying that the real problem in terms of violence in this country is, of course, because of the fake news.
No, you know what? You're creating violence by your questions. You are creating you. And also, a lot of the reporters are creating violence by not writing the truth. The fake news is creating violence. And you know what? The people that support Trump and the people that support us, which is a lot of people, most people, many people, those people know what a story is true and they know what a story is false. People. And I'll tell you what, if the media would write correctly and write accurately and write fairly, you'd have a lot less violence in the country.
What kind of Hampshire College bullshit is that? You're creating violence with that question?
The question is creating violence.
The question's creating violence.
That question is literally violence.
That question is literally violence.
All
My plane and the entire White House is a safe space.
All that's missing is the hand clap emojis. God.
Right. This is
Steve Mnuchin there snapping fingers.
Pretty nuts.
Mic check. Mic check.
So Donald Trump can be out there and saying that the media is causing violence. I mean, this is how far we've gotten from the days where they would say that it was like the violent TV shows that are creating violence. Now it's reporters asking questions.
I remember back in a time when it was Bad Boys 2 that created violence. Now it's CNN.
Honestly,
it's terrible.
On one hand, you have to ask yourself, what theoretically the mass shooter who killed 11 people in a synagogue, just so angry about the tone of the questions at the White House press pool that he went out and murdered 11 people.
And don't forget that it's Trump. So not only would Trump say that, but then he'd also say that the people at the synagogue agreed with him.
There you go.
Like, the press was so they treated Sarah Huckabee so terribly. We got shot.
There you go.
And that's what everybody say.
You put fake news in people's mailboxes. Just look what's coming to yours.
All right. Well, meanwhile, with that said, Donald Trump claims that the questions that the media asks are creating the violence. That may not be creating the violence, but I suspect that Donald Trump referring to the media as public enemy number one is going to create violence. I mean, look, we already have a situation where the MAGA bomber sent bombs to the New York Times, to Did one go to the Post? There was a couple of media outlets that got
CNN got one.
CNN got one. And if you've never seen a grown man, and by a grown man I mean like this guy, I would say minimum in his 40s. Minimum. If you've never seen a grown man get completely agitated by a news company, you will, this will be enlightening to you. This is down in Florida at a DeSantis rally, and CNN is covering that rally, and then this guy nearly has an aneurysm.
CNN sucks! 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 CNN sucks!
The important thing about
That
this
guy.
clip is that he looks like Steve Martin.
He's so
doing
upset. He
Yeah.
does. He looks exactly. If the jerk part 2, he becomes a Republican, like a MAGA chud.
Yeah, he's really lost his mind since Father of the Bride.
Yeah. But this is a
is so
guy.
awesome.
He is. I mean, he looks like he's like a manager of like a retail outlet in that mall or something, and he is just extremely agitated about CNN
Because they suck.
He is just.
You're not listening,
He's just
dude.
super mad. Like I can understand seeing guys like that at, a basketball game or a baseball game where you actually think in your mind, I could distract this guy as he's taking a foul shot, or I could distract this pitcher or this hitter for 1 second, and maybe I could actually
mess up a
impact
free
the,
throw.
impact the outcome of the game. But if you're the CNN camera guy, and that guy is 25 feet away from you, yelling like he's going to give himself an aneurysm, that CNN sucks, the only thing you're thinking is, I'm done for the day after I hand in this video. I don't have to do anything else. That's my job for the day. I just got this crazy guy.
To be
yelling.
fair, I do this in front of the National Review offices about
Well,
once
that's
a week.
right. That's right. You do that.
Has anyone checked on Steve Martin lately?
He's
Make sure it's not him.
NR
All right.
sucks. NR sucks. Buckley was a pedophile.
We're gonna head into the head into the fun half. Just a reminder, folks, Hunt a Killer is a monthly subscription that sends you cryptic clues, objects, and letters so you can solve crime in real time. It's so interactive, it feels real. Something you can do, and it's like it's more fun than a board game. A little creepy. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority for 10% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so hurry, take advantage of this offer. That's huntakiller.com/majority for 10% off your first box, huntakiller.com/majority. All right, folks, going to head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. A reminder, tomorrow we're going to be doing a regular show, probably be on the short side, and then at approximately 7:38 Eastern Time, we're going to go live with the results coming in. We may have some special guests. I don't know, but it's basically a lot of people are going to be home watching the results. And if you would like to do so with, we're just, all we're going to be doing is more or less aggregating stuff from various sources online and drinking. So if you are sitting at home, you intend on watching one of the cable news things, well, turn on your computer too and have us, and we will be more entertaining, and we will just regurgitate what we see on those channels anyways.
Like Chris Hayes, except drunk.
Exactly. Also, reminder, you can become a member of the Majority Report. When you become a member, we not only give you extra time every day, but we also take out the ads. So it's an ad-free experience, plus extra content, and you're supporting the free show every day. Join themajorityreport.com. Join themajorityreport.com. Just dimes a day, nickels a day, really nickels a day. 10 nickels. Less than 10 nickels. No, about 10 nickels. It depends on if you're talking weekdays or weekends. Also, today is Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday.
Joint TMBS MR election night coverage tomorrow night.
Well, sort of, but not really.
Well, no, but literally, yes.
I mean, no.
Why is that no? I'm
It's
confused.
just the majority report.
It's just the majority report.
I mean, in a way, you could say.
You can't give me a little. You can't give the show a little shared billing. Why not?
No.
Why so stingy?
Well, just because.
Bad deal.
Bad
Should've
deal.
Never been thought of.
Wow.
Right. Bad deal.
All right, Shylock. So what we're gonna do is.
Oh,
No,
all right.
that was very petty and stingy and sad.
Well,
But so we are gonna do, I think, 2 shows next week. There will be
2 shows.
full.
Well, all right. I hope they're full.
What?
I said I hope your shows are full next week.
You have a wonderful day, bro, and I'll see you again soon.
Certainly.
I don't even understand at this point.
I'm just saying,
Full?
I've got, you said you're going to have 2 full shows next week. I should hope so, because as a patron,
Okay, I got it.
And you're not just, I don't think I'm getting across the logic of it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Get all of the Patreon content at patreon.com/TMBS. Go to our YouTube channel. Now we have quite a few clips up at Michael Brooks Show. And I want to say on the Majority Report homepage, you can buy tickets now to the first Michael Brooks live show, which will be at the Bell House, February 1st in Gowanus in Brooklyn, with special guests Alona Minkowski, Bhaskar Sunkara, and Ricky Rawls from Champagne Sharks.
I have to get the gushing out first.
I don't get that one. We've already sold almost a third of our tickets, and we've only been up for under a week, so get them quick.
That's good. Where is it going to be? The Bell House?
At the Bell House, where we did the show.
We are also, is that official yet? Do we know that? Yeah, but they're announcing it next week. Okay. All right. There'll be there's another thing happening apparently at the Bell House.
Sweet.
But we
competition would start kicking in.
All right, and the Antifada.
Yeah, so in addition to the joint Antifada and MR election coverage, we have...
What? I missed it.
The joint Antifada MR coverage. We'd already worked that out. We'd already done the billing. There was just not enough room on the billboard.
Yeah, in addition to that, this week we have on a very special and very anonymous guest. His fake name is Jay Firestone. He did a pretty heroic thing, actually. Spent 3 months infiltrating the alt-right in New York City. Wrote a really good article for Commune magazine about it that's currently going viral. And we have him on our show, folks, talking about the experience, what these people are like, and we have a little wide-angle analysis of the far right, anti-fascist tactics, how to fight it, etc. in these dark, dark fucking times.
Sweet. And Matt, Literary Hangover, doing a joint
election coverage special.
Glad to announce that. So this is the first election coverage Literary Hangover has done, isn't it?
Branching out a little bit. I released some patron-only content last night. The first Hangover Hangout. I did get a bit tipsy, and some of my language is a bit much, but I edited it down a little bit. So talk about my trip upstate to Lake George, where I stayed at the fort that's featured in Last of the Mohicans. We talk about Matt Weiner's The Romanoffs, and some other stuff. So if patrons, you can check that out. Patreon.com/literary hangover.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920 is the number. We will be right back after this.
Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238. 56, 27, 1/2, 5 eighths, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate mather.
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Grandpa.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. Sam is now with you right now. Do you have that video? Will you look into the group I am there? Somebody did a video. One of our fans, Brian. Yeah, this is a pretty good video. We'll play that in a second. First, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 210.
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. Well, what's the latest, John?
Yeah, on Saturday I posted my top 70 most flippable districts on my Twitter page. I'm not sure if you can reference this or I put it up on the screen, but it's a pinned tweet. So since that post, the Siena Live polling that's available.
Well, John, why don't you tell people what is your handle?
Yeah, it's Raucous Dendrite at Cacophonous Minuti. It's spelled Cacophonous Minuti is spelled CACOPHOUSMIN.
Hold on for 1 second, John. What went into the idea of making your Twitter handle that sort of, I guess, inaccessible?
Is this a childhood screen name from AOL or something?
No, I mean, I just like I like a lot of abstract music, so I like, a lot of people say, like, the cacophony, and it's like they think of it as a negative thing, but I mean, I actually like, abstract music, and so I wanted to include that, and I like minutia.
Hell yeah.
So I wanted to have cacophonous minutia.
So it's raucous, cacophonous, all right, say it again.
Cacophonous Minuti.
Okay.
Cacophonous Minuti.
Did you find it?
Hell yeah. You should come up to Hudson with me for the 24-hour drone festival next year.
I love a lot of drone music.
Okay.
So
we can't find it.
Okay.
Every fifth time I learn something so cool about you, John.
Wow. I don't know why it's so spread out, but okay. Okay. Go ahead, John.
Okay. So anyway, on the website, the New York Times websites, and they've been putting up these live polling events since September. And so the last few have been really good for Democrats. Michigan 8th District, Alyssa Slotkin is up by 7 points over Republican incumbent Mike Bishop. And, when we were talking about the so-called socialist panel and you mentioned how the advantage to run as a person of color, immediately I thought, yes, if your constituency had a high percentage or majority of people of color in the district. And it made me think about what Chris Hayes' observation about how in 3 districts, New York's 19th, Georgia's 6th, and Illinois' 14th, they have 2 black women and a Hispanic man running in these districts that are majority white districts.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering if they can win in these districts. And according to the latest polling, the question is, the answer is yes in the Siena polling. In Illinois' 14th district, which is the Chicago suburbs, Lauren Underwood, who's a nurse and used to work in the Obama administration under Health and Human Resources, is leading Republican incumbent Randy Holtgen by 6 points, reversing a 4-point lead by the same pollster in a poll that ended on October 8th. In Georgia's 6th, Democrat Lucy McBath had a tragic event in her life. Her son was killed at a gas station when he played his music too loud. That story made national news and turned McBath into an activist, and now she's leading Republican incumbent Karen Handel by 2 points in the latest Siena poll. This is the district that John Ossoff lost in the special election. And in New York's 19th district, Antonio Delgado, who I have a soft spot for because his named his son Coltrane, is up by 1 point in the same poll, the Siena poll, over John Faso. And all these candidates are closing strong, and I hope they can win. So Democrats need 23 seats to flip the House, and I've been talking about the 2 tranches of races on this show. There are 18 races that are very likely to flip, 16 Democratic and 2 Republican, which would be a net gain of 14 seats, which would then leave 4 more seats for the Democrats to flip to win the House. I've added 5 more seats to the races, and I consider toss-ups, and so that total is now 30. You asked me to break down these races on Friday, and I didn't give you a very good answer, so I'll try again. Clinton won 11 of those districts, and most of those are at the top of the most flippable races within the toss-up realm. There are 5 races in California, 2 in Jersey, 2 in New York, 2 in Texas, 2 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Virginia, and there's a good mix of wealthy, high-educated suburbs like Illinois 6, California's 45th and 48th, and districts in blue or purple states with medium-sized cities and rural surroundings like Iowa's 3rd and Maine's 2nd.
John, hold on 1 second. I just want to this dynamic where the idea of a district that voted for Clinton but still had a Republican congressperson. What is that a function of? Is that just simply because more often than not that congressperson's been there for a long time, or people like the idea of splitting the ticket? I mean, what is that a function of?
Trump. I mean, I think that's it was. I mean, to me, it was very obvious it was Trump. I mean, you talked about the Fedescopal, the women that are activated. You did many interviews with her and mentioned it on your show. I mean, I think that's mostly the main thing.
So, in other words, there are people who did not want to vote for Trump, but they thought, okay, I'll still vote for my Republican congressperson because that will give either a balance. Clinton will win, and the Republican Congress will provide a check. and or they've also come to realize, like, hey, my voting for my Republican congressman is like voting for Trump now, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
I mean, you see this all the time. I mean, I tweeted this morning about how in that NBC poll they actually have that men were more activated than women. I seriously question that. I don't believe that at all. I mean, I just it was 67 to 73 for men. I mean, I just don't see that. There's absolutely no way that I see that happening. And I mean, the women have been. I mean, the numbers are just incredible. I mean, the differences in the men's. I mean, like that Delgado race. You know,
right.
A couple of polls back, it was plus 18 for men in Delgado. No, it was women for Delgado and plus 18 for FASA with men. And you see that all the time, these huge margins. But, I mean, I just think that women are going to be more motivated. I mean, I just don't think it's going to be close. And you can see that also in the stats you were talking about, some stats in early voting. Like in Georgia, the early voting stats are like, I think it was 56 to 44. I mean, they were just astounding. So, I mean, I think the national numbers, maybe it reflects the point that, you know, a lot of rural men are going to vote for Trump, and they're going to run up the score just like that's what happened in California.
Right, it's sort of the opposite of, yeah. And it's quite possible in states that are so red, turnout is a little bit depressed. But I can tell you that the 19th district, got a couple of 19th district voters here with us today, was the district that Zephyr Teachout ran in 2014 and lost to Faso. And the Mercers dumped about $7 million into that race. And my understanding is I'm not aware of them doing that again this time. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard for Republican, you know, mega donors to compete with all the money that's being brought in just by individual donors. I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are saying, well, you know, as you see the generic ballot tighten a little bit, it's not tightening that much. It's very slightly tightening. I mean, in fact, you know, it's 9.1 right now on 538, and I think that's more than enough to easily win. But you know, they just can't compete. I mean, most of these candidates for the last 2 weeks have had more money than Republicans, despite all the mega donors. I mean, it's people-powered politics versus, you know, oligarchical politics, and the people are winning, and hopefully they'll win tomorrow.
Well, we'll see. John, do you have anything more? Or we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, I mean, if you know, just some of the districts that are more moderate that you were talking about. You were talking about moderate Republicans, like Brian Fitzpatrick in Mindy's district, the first district, Carlos Cobello in the 26th district of Florida. You know, in a district that Clinton won by 16. It covers southern Miami and the suburbs. I mean, those are just a few of the moderates. Most of these people aren't running against moderates. They're running against like Balderson, people like that, you know, who are extreme. I mean, that's most of the Republican Party, as you well know. So, I mean, that makes it a lot easier, in my opinion, for people to distinguish the differences.
Appreciate the call, John.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Stay cacophonous.
And it is.
Yeah, neither cacophonous or minutiae are spelled how
correctly
those words are spelled. It's cacophus.
Cacophus.
Minuti.
And minuti. But
it's like he's in code or something.
I favored his pinned tweet, so people can go to my Twitter feed and find it, and it really is like I mean, if you were trying to come up with a name that was going to keep people from barraging you on Twitter, that would probably be what you would do. We had a listener who sent in, let's play this because it's pretty funny. Listener, Brian, let's say his whole name, but sent in a video. As you know, we have an ongoing challenge with Steven Crowder. And, oh, yeah, here it is, Brian McAllister. He shot this, or he edited this video. Here it is.
I like to think that, I mean, it's really hard to get leftist guests on our show. That's just a reality. We try and book them.
Crowder doesn't think there's a rape culture.
I usually do try and get into an engagement of ideas.
Steven Crowder, so interesting.
You know, now that we're talking about Steven Crowder, 3 or 4 months ago, I was invited to Politicon. When they asked me if I would come, I said, yeah, I will if I can debate someone. Now, of course, I threw out Dave Rubin, and I was told that he's not coming. Competition would start kicking in. And so I said Crowder, and the people were like, great. And it all looked good. And I was told that Steven Crowder literally stopped responding to their emails. Pretty sure the quote was, somebody got cold feet. Steven Crowder, I am issuing you a challenge to debate. I will host you on any time, any platform, any way to debate. Really, the question that Steven Crowder should ask his Alexa is, do I have the fortitude to debate Sam Seder?
No, you are not courageous enough to face a middle-aged Jew who likes facts and figures. You are a coward.
Steven, I know you are watching or hearing this, and everybody else knows it too. There's no way you're not aware that I've issued this challenge now. You knew it was coming when you backed out of Politicon because you were afraid of debating me, and here it is. Steven, we'll see you soon.
Maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but you can wear your not gay t-shirt and you can have an opening statement, right?
Oh.
You'll let him have the opening statement, I'm assuming.
Oh, sure. There you go. That was fantastic.
You got to respond or you're done.
I mean, look, it does appear that Steven Crowder is pretending like he's not aware of this, and I know that he is aware of this. Out of respect for someone who knows that he's aware of this and does not want me to, let's just put it this way. I know that he's aware of this. And he is just pretending like he's not seeing it. And that's the plan. So here is my my trying to address members of Steven's audience. Look, you've admired this guy. He has claimed to be out there, you know, wanting to debate ideas, and he goes to college campuses and, you know, finds 19, 20-year-olds who are young and still forming their opinions and probably not adept at the issues, understandably. I don't think that I was at 19 or 20. I don't know if Steven was. Maybe he was. But you as an audience member, more than anyone else, you would want to see Steven hand it to me in a debate, embarrass me, show how much...
Change your mind.
Maybe change my mind, in his parlance. It is very important that you tweet at Steven. You can tweet at both of us and say it's time for a debate. And because I don't want you as an audience member of Steven's to watch him, and every time you watch him, you think, why is this guy running from Sam Seder? What is he really just full of it? Is he really that afraid? I don't want to ruin your experience of Steven in that way. And now when you watch him, you'll probably be thinking that, and I want that to end. I want you to be able to watch Steven Crowder and feel proud about it instead of feeling like you're watching something dirty.
Because if you're going to feel like you watch something dirty, you might as well watch something dirty instead of that. So, so that is my
interesting lane there.
Well, I just don't want to ruin the experience of watching Steven Crowder when his audience will have to know the guy is sort of a fraud. So, implore Steven Crowder to respond to my challenge.
Just watch porn.
Thank you. Meanwhile, there was apparently conservatives someone played a mean joke on them. Now, as you are aware, the walk away thing. Wait, didn't the big walk away event happen?
Well,
wasn't it supposed to be so huge?
Yes, that thing was a sort of washout, so they switched to Blexit.
Oh, so they rolled walk away into Blexit.
Well, yeah.
And Blexit blew up because apparently they used Kanye's name without really being associated. And
Candace Owens grifted Kanye a bit too hard and said that he designed the Blexit logo, and Kanye's like, I didn't do that, and now I see that my talents are being used to spread messages I don't agree with. So everyone's upset at Candace Owens for ruining the spokesperson they had there.
Well, that's too bad. But fortunately for those conservatives who were looking for a Blexit hero, they had reformed Republican. Her name was Chickpeas. And she wrote on Twitter, I will not hide any longer. The left has made us feel as if black Republicans should hide, but not anymore. Hashtag blacks for Trump. Hashtag walk away. Hashtag MAGA. In fact, she was wearing a MAGA hat. And then she posted that on last week on October 27th. I guess maybe a week and a half ago. Oh, yeah, 4 days after. And then 4 days after that, on Halloween, she wrote, thank you all so much for your overwhelming support. After seeing this tweet, my parents cut me off and refused to pay my university tuition. So if you can find it in your hearts to help this young black Republican pay for school, it would be appreciated. And there was a GoFundMe. And there were some reports that she had made over $150,000. Her original tweet got 24,000 likes and 8,300 retweets. And then, of course, Christmas ended. And it turns out, she writes, Kegel Queen writes, there's a black girl pretending to be a Trump supporter, and MAGA folks have been sending her donations since she produced fraudulent texts of her parents kicking her out. And what is just JSK, SKS?
I don't know, actually.
Why do y'all expose me,
just like
WTF?
Typing hard and randomly.
Right.
It's like, bah! And
then other people said it turns out it was a fraud, ladies and gentlemen. She did ultimately cop to it. She did post this as a joke. Anyways, just ordered my iPhone XS Max. Y'all want some from the Apple store. And of course, she was joking. It turns out she didn't really raise much money at all. Her name is, well, I'm not going to give her name because she's probably now going to get, she wrote the next day, hot take, stealing from Republicans isn't bad because Republicans aren't people. And she apparently just wanted to troll people. And she has to say that on the phone Saturday, Brian Feldman from New York Magazine spoke to her. She admitted that she didn't raise much of anything and that she'd refunded what she had received. That's between me and the IRS, she said coyly. Yeah. Asked for a ballpark figure. She said, I didn't scam anybody. The thing, though, I didn't. I just felt really weird about taking their money. This could go south really fast. I just decided to refund to everyone and give their money back. I think it was maybe $200 at that point.
Just take the money.
Yeah, you gotta just go for it.
Just get into character and take the money.
I just honestly didn't want to take their money. Yeah, I can't pay for school, but I don't want Republican money to pay for it. Just want everyone to think I'm the finesse queen, which I am.
You know what we call that? A proof of concept.
And she wanted to use the attention to her advantage. I mean, because she'd done it originally just as a joke. And a lot of Republicans have this idea that everyone thinks Republicans are mostly racist, and they're really desperate to get that stigma off them. And I felt like capitalizing on that. I was at 900 likes, and I told my friend, I feel like this is going to blow up. Let's try and get some money off these dumb, rich Republicans. Thus, the GoFundMe was born. But like she said, she didn't really do anything. And
somebody should start a GoFundMe for her now, though.
Yeah,
seriously.
Good job.
More hoaxes.
I'll Venmo her right now.
There you go. Then mission accomplished. And then she can turn around and say, I scammed all the anarcho-capitalists.
Yep. If we can't get reparations through officially, maybe this is a good way to go.
There you go. Let's go to the phones. Calling from 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, is that you?
Yes, this is me. Who's this?
Hey, it's Vito from Maryland. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Vito? What's on your mind?
So, last week I did my little part to stem the tide of fascism. I voted early, and here in Maryland, it does look like turnout is pretty high. I talked to one of the poll workers. He said on the very first day of early voting, there were 40,000 people showed up
wow.
in this district where I live. So that's pretty heavy, especially for midterm. And then last Tuesday, I went to a Bernie Sanders Get Out the Vote rally with Ben Jealous and did a little canvassing. So I feel a little bit better. But I wanted to speak a little bit about something. I've noticed some sort of mainstream Democrats here and there talking about. They use the word normal, like, you know, when we get back to the House of Representatives, things can go back to normal, and I'm not sure we can go back to normal. The problem, I think, is that a lot of these Republicans that are probably going to lose are not the Trumpiest of Republicans, and therefore I think...
Vito, that is exactly right. People should be, and I made this point a couple of weeks ago on Hayes' program, but I'll reiterate it. First off, the idea that the Republicans' fever is going to break. We heard Barack Obama make that argument in multiple different ways. If we take back the House, their fever will break. If they get the House, their fever will break. What's going to happen is the people who lose, the vast majority of Republicans who lose, are going to be the most moderate of Republicans. They're going to be in districts where they have had to sort of temper their perspectives because they're in purple districts. So what we're going to be left with are the Trumpiest of the Trumpy Republicans, assuming the Democrats take the House, assuming the Democrats win any elections. So the insanity, folks, is not going to end. I mean, this is the way that this is the metaphor I've been using, and I appreciate the phone call, Vito. But it is as if, was it Jason from Friday the 13th? Oh. Is coming at you. And if you have a baseball bat to stop this guy, he doesn't become any less crazy. It's just that you have a baseball bat to protect yourself. He's still just as crazy.
He's going to take his hockey mask off, and he's going to say, is this who I really want to be?
Exactly. And so that's the dynamic that we're dealing with here.
You slash up enough sleepover parties, and you think to yourself, is this really the legacy I want to leave?
That is honestly...
Take off my hockey mask and figure out if we can work across the aisle.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 508 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Hello, this is Worcester Mike from Worcester, Massachusetts.
Sweet. What's up, Worcester Mike?
Yes. How you doing? This is the first-time caller. fairly long time listener, a couple of years now. So actually, I just wanted to talk about your, I guess it was last week somebody called in, and actually I think you were off, Sam, but somebody called in and said, I can't remember exactly her argument, but it was essentially that the rest of the crew there sort of adds distractions to the leftist agenda of the program. I don't know if those guys remember it, but I think she got into it a little bit with Jamie over no need to talk about capitalism so much because everybody's on the same page.
Did this happen? Well,
but anyway,
was I
it
gone?
happened Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, last Thursday. So anyway, the reason why I was calling was a couple of years ago I started getting into the alternative media, and I only listened to right-wingers, and the reason was I'm hardcore left, have been for years now, and I was like, I got to understand their arguments. I got to see where they're coming from. But what I realized is that they don't really have any arguments, and what they have is a bunch of talking points that are just really straw man themselves, if you will. And so I just wanted to kind of give props out to Jamie because I think it's great that she brings in a much harder left perspective, but I also want to give a shout out to all you guys because I've learned more about our side of the arguments and the conversations from your show than I ever did from trying to listen to both sides, if you will. And so with this, I hope Steven Crowder calls you up. I know he's not going to, but I hope he does because I'd love to see you wipe the floor with him just like you did with Charlie Kirk. And I guess that's all I got to say. So thanks and keep up the good work.
And congratulations on the Woe Sox. I don't call them the Woo Sox. I call them the Woe Sox.
Yes, and I know you're going home in a couple of weeks, so I live in Nebraska right now, so I live in flyover country. I'm ready to go out and vote for Kara Eastman. I'm glad you guys are giving her some voice out there too. I don't hear much about her on the national media, so.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, the polls aren't looking great, but it you know what you also don't hear about is the amount of money that's been dumped into her to the Republican side in that race. I mean, and it is amazing that she's making them spend that kind of money there. But hopefully she'll get another bite at the apple. But I appreciate the call, Mike.
Well,
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Here's a question for you. Here's a quick question for you. Why does everyone think Nancy Pelosi on the right? I can understand why we don't like her all that much, but why does everyone think she's so evil on the right? I mean, all the ads against Kara Eastman, it's literally like this lurking Nancy Pelosi in the background. It's like she's like the Grim Reaper standing behind Kara Eastman. It's really weird.
It's been a long time. Well, first off, Nancy Pelosi started years ago. She was more progressive than she is today, right? She was a member of the Progressive Caucus. But you got to remember the legacy here is that she's from San Francisco. And 12 years ago, the President of the United States got on national television and said, I want to propose an amendment to change the Constitution so that gay people can't get married. I mean, we are not that far out. It just sort of fell off a cliff on some level. But 10, 15 years ago, they couldn't stop talking about San Francisco politics, and that was code for gay people. And so there was a legacy built there. I mean, on some level, it's really just like there's still vestiges of that. You know, they did it with Obama, and it didn't work very well. Like they talked about Chicago-style politics. Nobody knows what that means. Like honestly, and it's just it's a much older cohort that had any sense of it anyways.
It means urban, right?
Well, it does, but not necessarily. I don't think no more so than any other city. I mean, I think Chicago-style politics was supposed to be like old Democratic mafia and control. But no, I think it was supposed to be more like Daley,
Capone, but it's just organized crime in people's minds.
Corrupt politics.
Well, then it became the gun violence thing.
Maybe.
That was even
but I'm
more.
not
That was
convinced
not
about
until
that.
the second
I
term
thought there
of
might have been
Obama. That happened much
a
later.
little racial dog whistling going on there too.
Possibly.
Well, there always is because there's the connection of crime. I mean, that's DeSantis's closing argument against Andrew Gillum, is that he's an organized crime figure, and it isn't just because of the FBI investigation. They always try to make black politicians criminalized. That's the game.
Anyways, Mike, that's what I think it is with Pelosi there.
Also, these people have worms in their brains. Like, don't underestimate that. The kind of mush-brained baby boomer who watches Fox News and follows QAnon and will tag Nancy Pelosi, the DNC, and me in the same tweet is probably not firing on all cylinders.
That's a really good point, actually.
Thanks for the
it's crazy. They're always talking in codes. I mean, everything is like this coded language and straw man attacks, and they don't actually ever even come up with any information or any. They don't back it up with anything. It's always just some coded thing of trying to get people to react. I guess it's kind of like advertising. I guess. Hey, thanks guys for everything you guys do. I love listening to you guys. I'm really glad I got to get through on the call. It's rare for me to even be able to call into the show, so I really appreciate it. Left is best.
All right, appreciate the call. Thank you. Worcester rocks.
Represent.
I wish I had a IROC Z card to award that guy. Didactical Cracker. Mike, I'm so psyched to hear you'll cover election night live tomorrow on TMBS. Are you planning any special guests, any crew, or maybe just Sam? Peace, brother.
Yeah, Sam will stop by.
He'll be like, what happened is the Republicans talk about cultural issues when they're in power.
At a minimum, just wanted to say utopian ideas serve as a good basis to build coalitions off of. And I appreciate Jamie espousing them. Left is best.
Oh, thank you.
Emma, here's my Medicare for All implementation question. What will prevent employers from pocketing the amount they currently set aside from workers' paychecks, and then the workers incur additional taxes for Medicare on their base pay? For example, when I was hired, my contract said my job cost my employer $80,000, but I get $60,000 in salary, with 1/4 of my pay, in quotations, going to benefits. Why wouldn't my employer keep that $20,000 under the new system so that now my health costs taxes will come out of the remaining $60K? I'm convinced I'm 100% in favor of Medicare for all, but I'm not convinced people won't be hurt by employers taking advantage of the switch. It's not like they'll start paying me the full amount of my contract. I mean, that's a good question. I think one of the things is that there will be other employers who will also have that extra money, and they will start to use it to compete for workers. Some of that money will go towards taxes that they will have to pay on their end. But some of that money will also undoubtedly go because all the employers cannot make the agreement. One will break. And then once one breaks, I think that money will be kicked back.
Yeah, employer-sponsored healthcare began, right, partially as a result of a cap on ginning up salaries to attract workers, right, at a time when the federal government was scared of inflation. So hopefully, maybe, that competition will start kicking in and they'll have to compete with salaries again in the same way. Who knows?
There may ultimately be a need for some type of government incentive to that. Like, we know that your savings are X and you'll pay a tax penalty. So you might as well give it to your employee. JJ Cool, are we going to see John from San Antonio added to the joint majority report Antifada literary hangover election coverage? He was already there.
How is he not going to be there?
Roaming MR member. My brother is a huge Crowder fan. Can you make that Crowder song available for download? That would make my Thanksgiving amazing.
I tweeted it out.
What, the video?
Video, yep.
California Uber Alles. I signed up for Hunter Killer and all I got was a MAGA bomb. Leftist benevolent commando. What's up, MR crew? Hey, Sam. You know how you said that Obama didn't know who he was dealing with Republicans? I would add to that the left in general hasn't known what it was dealing with the past 3 or 4 decades because the right has managed to hedge its power in so many ways. So when the midterms are over, then what? Well, the one thing I have to say is that, and I haven't dug too far into it, but on Pelosi's agenda is voting rights. And it seems to me the Democrats can vote to reinstate Section 5 formula in the Voting Rights Act. And this is going to be a very difficult thing for senators to vote against. Because the Senate ratified this in 2007. And that's going to be a big deal. Now, the DOJ is going to sign off on a lot of these voting changes anyways under Trump, I think. Maybe they could reject some. But it's a big deal in that regard. Sam's Tinder profile. Hey, girl, swipe right. Will you be my date to the polls tomorrow? I want to lower the age of Social Security. Calling from a 757 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Sebastian from Florida. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sebastian, I can hear you. What is on your mind?
I was just wondering, what do you think about the term liberal media? Do you think it's true that the media are liberal, or what do you think?
I mean, I think that I would say probably the majority of individuals who work in the media, I would say, would probably, if they were to admit what their ideology was, would refer to themselves as liberal. That doesn't mean that what the product they put out is liberal. I think, frankly, there's a lot of reason to believe that a lot of those people overcompensate. So you end up seeing stuff like in the New York Times in reporting on the bombing or the attempted bombing of 12 people. These are what the 12 people who received bombs said about Donald Trump. Like, that is a very weird construct, right? Like as if like they deserve. So I don't think the product of the media is particularly liberal. Although, like, it depends on what the right is defining as liberal at any given time. Like I think
is it classical liberalism or is it progressive liberalism?
I don't think that the right has a definitional set of what that constitutes. I think it is, whatever it is in that era. It could be like too pro-immigrant. It could be they want to, they're too pro-welfare or something. I mean, I think the word liberal means something different, let's say, between Jamie's perspective on what the word is and what Sean Hannity's perspective on the word is.
Yeah, I agree. I have one more question. What do you think of, what was I going to say? So Dave Rubin, is there going to be a debate between you and Dave Rubin, or is he too afraid?
I was going to. Yes, he's too afraid.
Yeah, but let me just say this.
Right,
Can cool. Let me just say this in case Dave's watching. I think Dave's a really smart guy, and we should treat him more respectfully.
There you go. Appreciate the call.
Right. Have a good day.
Bye.
I disagree with it, but that was no reason to demean his intellect or anything like that. No, nothing. I'm sorry. I'm just congested or something.
Congestion. Call from 412 area code. Who's this? 412. 412 going once.
Is this me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Alston from Long Beach. Number from Pittsburgh, but I live in Long Beach. How's it going?
Alston from Long Beach. What's on your mind?
Oh, first of all, congrats with the Red Sox. as a longtime Browns fan, I know how that feels to go a very long time without any success. So that's
Well, I mean, the Red Sox have had quite a bit of success over the past 10 years, but go ahead.
oh, the Browns were dominant in the early days, but there's anyways, I wanted to give you guys a call because this is a first-time caller, long-time listener, and I wanted to voice a concern that I've had that I wanted to get your guys' take on, given what's been going on for the past couple of weeks, months, and years, as we've seen the kind of rise of white nationalism and, by extension, the hints of fascism in America and around the world. With the midterms coming up, I have a big paranoid feeling about the Trump administration and the various, tentacles that have sprouted since his election. If there is a blue wave that sweeps the midterms, will this administration find a way to somehow undermine it, as they're already doing in the lead up to it?
To undermine it, you mean in terms of like voter suppression?
Like, I mean, like extensively, reject it, not accept the results.
I think there'll be an attempt to make it seem like the outcome was illegitimate, but I don't think they're going to, I don't think we're at the point now where we're going to dissolve the Congress or something like that.
You don't think Operation Faithful Patriot is like a...
No, I don't.
Okay.
But listen, I think there are other things
I don't know.
It's a lot of patriots.
The Democrats don't pose enough of a threat for them to even do that.
That's not where we're at institutionally yet, and I don't think that the military is actually on board with that. And I'm not any type of person to praise the military, but let's be real. Like,
although the Baileys could tell Chuck Schumer, like, don't.
Actually,
don't
the
fight
Baileys told me to dissolve the Senate, and I'm here to tender my resignation.
Well, that's kind of
Mr. President, if I may vote.
The Party has been very weak, and I don't think it would necessarily go the route of a full
I think, John,
kind of coup,
I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that, look, when you see the amount of voter suppression that has been institutionalized over the past 5 or 6 years in the wake of what the Supreme Court did to the Voting Rights Act, on some level, that is a form of what you're talking about. Right, it's a different form.
Coup.
Right.
It's softer.
Yeah, it's a soft coup. It's a slow, but I mean, we're seeing things kind of gearing up with, Kavanaugh. One of his first, real actions as a Supreme Court justice was undermining, indigenous people's voting rights in the Dakotas. So that's already they're coming off swinging with.
But like I say, like that is, they haven't made that leap yet. But I appreciate the call. Thanks, John.
And the ironic part of it is, if the GOP wins more, those results will be illegitimate because we know all the shit that they've been pulling.
I mean, it'll be. I haven't seen data to this effect, but I would imagine the percentage of eligible voters is down over the past 3 or 4 years for the first time maybe in the history since the Voting Rights Act. And there has been a consistent effort to disenfranchise tens of thousands of voters, ostensibly because of voter fraud. And there are almost there's the same amount of people in our studio today as confirmed cases of people voting illegally.
Yeah, we're all doing our part.
How many
for the
millions
Democrats.
of people are in our studio today?
So many millions.
There's literally
I
a
voted
caravan.
10 times already.
Let's go calling from a 630 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Shalom in the home. This is David, the white boy Muslim from Chicago.
David, the white boy Muslim from Chicago. What's on your mind, buddy?
Fuck out of here, white boy.
Well, I just had I kind of had anecdotal evidence, I guess, for what John from San Antonio was talking about before, where my parents are suburban Republicans who they're really annoyed with federal Republicans for backing up Trump and stuff, but they're still planning on voting for a Republican governor, which I'm trying to talk him out of. But so I guess one of the things, when I'm not a very good debater, so whenever I'm talking to them, sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, well, I've worked with government. I know it's inefficient or whatever." So do you have any recommendations for how to push back on that?
What, that I've worked for government and it's inefficient?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Have they worked
I would
for?
respond
Have
with
they
your
worked?
mom joke.
Well, no. Have they worked in a major company? Like, I mean, the amount of when people see inefficiency in the context of corporate culture, they're like, this is a benefit. This is like a bonus, right? Like, the inefficiency means like I get to work less, or I'm getting, that's there's no, in other words, there's no difference between a huge enterprise that is private and one is the public. Maybe there's some differences, but in terms of like inefficiency, like for instance, Medicare spends about 2 cents of every dollar on administrative costs, whereas the private health insurance industry spends about 20 cents of every dollar. That's not efficient. The U.S. Postal Service is a complete wonder. Nothing can come even close to what the U.S. Postal Service does. That is why Amazon hires the post office to deliver a ton of their packages. And they would never, ever go to someone's rural, deep rural stuff for 40 cents. FedEx is not going to send anything, into the, away from a major city for 40 cents. They're not going to do it for anywhere. But I mean, they would never send a letter for 40 cents. It's not worth it to them. I mean, these are wonders. Yeah. People malign the DMV, but more often than not, you got to go and wait for a half an hour, but the amount of people that it's serving is incredible. There's just nothing. Like, you want to compare, go check out your cable service. Go return your cable box. You want to talk about the efficiency of it just so happens that government handles the most complicated, difficult stuff. The VA, for instance, take the VA. The VA is a massive enterprise, and it gets very good grades from people who use VA services. It is far more efficient in delivering health care. But understand that the health care that the VA provides is so specified and so atypical because they are dealing with people who have been purposely put into the worst situations you can for mental and physical health. And so they deal with traumas that normal doctors don't see, that normal hospitals couldn't possibly take care of. They deal with psychological issues that civilian populations just don't deal with. And yet they do it. And short of some very well publicized problems in some specific places, get very good grades from its patients. And when they get assessed in terms of the work they do in terms of outcomes, get very good rankings. And this is all, you can look this up and, print it out and give it to your relatives. But you're talking about a massive undertaking. And it is, when we talk about government-provided healthcare, that's the only time where you have a government takeover of healthcare, is for the most difficult patient group in the country. That's our vets. So, those are examples of that. Not to mention Social Security, which is basically poverty insurance for your old age, or obviously orphan and survivor insurance, that is incredibly effective. It keeps 2/3 of our population out of poverty. I mean, there's failures. There's a lot of regulatory failures because the obstacles are
they're underfunded or whatever.
Well, it's the private industry. who's trying to fight the regulation.
Yeah.
But, we don't, you can compare it to like, you compare, rates of like, of contagious diseases, et cetera, et cetera. If government was more involved in vaccine, for instance, like there was a Lyme, because of my time upstate, I know a lot of people have gotten Lyme disease. I was talking to a guy the other day who had Lyme disease for a long time, and he was telling me he still has arthritis from it. There was a Lyme vaccine that was produced like 20 years ago. It only had about a 70% success rate, which is actually not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Too expensive for them. They took it off the market. They weren't making enough money. Now, that's super efficient, right? Like profit motive.
Yeah.
But if the government was more involved in that, it'd be pretty efficient to not have hundreds of thousands of people contract Lyme every year. Maybe it's more. So appreciate the call. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Maybe if white people didn't screw everything up, government work a little bit more efficiently. Devil.
There you go.
Just kidding. That's true Islam.
Yeah, we've also got giant houses and buildings sitting empty while people are homeless on the streets. And Jeremy Corbyn was talking about expropriating some of those and using them to house people who need it. So that's pretty cool.
And that's not...
Because you can redefine efficiency, right? Like,
well,
that
that's
is
the point.
quite efficient to do. Yeah.
I mean, there are some instances where the private industry can be more efficient, but that's because it's less democratic, right? Like, if I don't want to pay a fair wage and I don't care about unions and I don't care about the environmental impact of what I'm building or how it's going to hurt other people's property values around me or their way of life, or whether I cause kids to have birth defects or people to get cancer, I can much more efficiently move through, any project.
Right. So it's just not even the right frame for talking about government, as far as I'm concerned.
But
that's
it's
a premise I'd question.
But it's also it's not the right frame. It is. People have to understand what that means in the context of private business and of just any endeavor. It is far more efficient to not include the concerns of everyone around you to do something, right? I mean, just in any endeavor, what it is. The most efficient way for me to walk down a busy sidewalk is to bowl people over. But that, that's just the reality of it. But that's not so great for the people who get bowled over.
It depends.
Sorry, just being efficient. I don't even apologize.
No, sorry.
That would be inefficient.
I'm just not being politically correct. I don't have time for political correctness.
Exactly. Have to worry about your concerns. Folks, I saw a report from CNN. It blew my mind. I was in South Carolina for a wedding this weekend. And so CNN was the only thing available at the hotel. And I saw this report, and it was the host on the show was like, we're going to show you images from Yemen of children starving to death. And it's heartbreaking and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, good. This is good. The American public needs to know our role in what's going on there and how devastating it is. I mean, the UN has been warning us now for a couple of months. And really, I mean, this has been going on for months and months and months. But I think there was another report just like less than a couple of weeks ago that said we are right on the cusp. It may be even too late to stop one of the greatest humanitarian crises that we've seen in generations in Yemen. And it is because of the Saudi war and blockade basically being waged on Yemen. And They are able to do this for one reason, and that is because we enable them. We enable them with logistical support, with armament support. Look, we're not turning a blind eye to this. We are literally making it possible for them to do this. And so I'm watching this report, and the closest they came, and horrible images of individual children completely starving to death. Like sitting on a medical table, they can't even roll the kid over on his back because of the pain from the malnutrition. And they're talking about how heartbreaking this is. And the only reference in this like 5-minute report was at one point they said the Saudi-led U.S.-backed coalition. That was it. Just those words were the only words that basically would indicate to the American public, oh, incidentally, you have the ability to end this almost immediately. Now, the story was also pegged on Mattis saying that they have 30 days to try and wrap this up. And it was pretty weak tea, particularly when you see this from Donald Trump as to his regret in selling armaments to the Saudis. Now, understand, the Obama administration followed the same course. They didn't enable it as much. They did it supposedly in retrospect, and I don't know how you would assess this, as supposedly they thought like, oh, constructive engagement. If we're part of this, we can maybe hold them back. And they did supposedly have some shackles on the amount of civilian control, and they thought it would put them in a position to prevent something like this. But it's 2 years later, and the Trump administration just did what the Obama administration did, but with no restraints whatsoever. Here is Donald Trump sitting down with Jonathan Swain and Jim Vandehei for that Axios program.
Let's talk about foreign policy, big issue. What do you make of the situation in Yemen right now?
I think it's a terrible situation. I hated seeing what happened with the bus and the children, because it's a horror show when you see a thing like that. You saw the bus.
Well, I was going to ask you, because, I know, you're very proud of the arms deal you did with the Saudis, but that was a U.S.-made bomb on that bus.
But it wasn't operated by U.S. people.
I know, but it's the Saudis using our weapons, right?
Our people are the best operators in the world.
But does that bother you when they use an American, like a Lockheed weapon?
Jonathan, bother's not strong enough. That was basically people that didn't know how to use the weapon, which is horrible.
Would you ever stop selling them arms if this continues? If you keep seeing,
I don't want to see that. That is a terrible thing. What's going on in Yemen generally is a terrible thing, and we're going to see it. And we're looking at Yemen very carefully right now. We are actually studying Yemen very, very carefully.
How would you handle it?
It is probably right now the worst place on earth.
Yeah, UN says that. The UN says that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
okay, well, I say it
2018.
too. I didn't know the UN said it, but I say it.
How would you handle it differently if you were the Saudis?
I'll be talking about a lot of things with the Saudis, but certainly I wouldn't be having people that don't know how to use the weapons shooting at buses with children.
The Defense Department...
Pause it for 1 second. I mean, this is... If it wasn't so tragic, it would be sort of funny to watch a guy who clearly doesn't know what he's talking about like... I mean, look... They know how to use the weapons.
Well, I'm going to remind everybody of what they said about that bus bombing, which is our bad. We thought somebody was in there that didn't turn out to be in there.
Right. They were,
not,
in other words,
not that
they were aiming for the bus.
Right.
They
and we knew kids were there. It's just that the target that the kids would have been worth sacrificing for didn't turn out to be in the bus. So our bad.
Right. So this story of them not knowing how to use the weapons, first of all, it's a lie. Second of all, if that was the case, then that's exactly why you would use as an excuse, like, we're not going to sell it to you anymore because you don't know how to use them and it's killing civilians.
Going to work on the manuals.
But again, understand, he's focusing on this one story because he knows about it. He may or may not know. Apparently, he's not aware that the UN said we're on the cusp of a massive humanitarian crisis in terms of the deaths of tens of thousands of children, more, hundreds of thousands from starvation. But continue.
The Defense Department says it does not make tactical targeting decisions, but does improve their targeting. Quote from Mattis, I will tell you that we do help them plan what we call kind of targeting, the Defense Secretary General.
And we teach them how to use the equipment, but that doesn't mean...
Obviously not good enough.
Yeah, I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about it. But we'll see what happens with Yemen.
When Congress, in the last defense bill, they included a clause that required Pompeo, the Secretary of State, to certify that Saudi Arabia and the UAE were doing enough to avoid harming civilians. Now, remember, about a year or two ago, shortly after Trump came in office, he relaxed the rules on attacking civilians in Yemen that we had passed on to the Saudis. So you immediately saw more civilian casualties. So Pompeo had to provide that certification. Shortly after the bus bombing, Pompeo provided the certification that said that they were doing enough to reduce the risk of harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure resulting from these military operations of these governments. That is a quote from Pompeo. He also said that ending the war in Yemen was a national security priority and the United States would continue working with the Gulf allies to pursue peace talks. And we could end it like this by simply saying no more weapons. We're just not going to sell you the bombs anymore.
We're not going to refuel you in air either. That's another major part of how they're able to do this.
And there's not a lot of options for them unless they want to completely retool their entire military.
They don't have much of a military. They have a lot of gadgets from us, but yeah, exactly. They don't
to
have
the
ability
extent that
to
they
do this.
have jets and fighters. I mean, they need us. So we have leverage, in other words. Let's go to the IMs. Colin from Nebraska, TMBS approaching corporatist status with a effing sellout of its live event. Doe, how can media continue to say the economy's better and not at the same time report how Trump and family and Republicans are gutting the Treasury? What's a good 2 sentences that aren't snarky I could use to describe Jordan Peterson to someone who's been reading his stuff but not attached to him?
Mystic charlatan?
It's a little snarky.
I thought you asked for the opposite.
Incelpreneur.
Not snarky at all.
I think you could say that he is
Misguided self-help author.
selling misogyny in the guise of enhancing young men's self-esteem, and has also found it convenient, I think, to attach his ship to sort of soft conservatism in some way that is not well thought out. Jabby, Kegel Queen, how can I be a jester in that court? Mitch from Houston, Pelosi ads are all over Texas too. Just tell Trump that Yemen was Obama's idea. John from San Antonio, forgot to mention, if people want to follow my alt Twitter account, it's just John from San Antonio, but first you need to translate it into Sanskrit. Is that true? Anarchy GTA. We protested Steve Bannon speaking last night in Toronto, and the police pepper sprayed us and arrested a bunch of us. Jesus. Patriot Gayer, that sexy, very proud boy, Joey Gibson, and his gimp, Tiny, are planning another rally at City Hall in Portland, Oregon, with his wide-eyed Jesus freaks on November 17th. Counter-protesters are encouraged to turn out. Retcon, you and Janine were on Morning Joe in 2005. Not Morning Joe, it was Scarborough Country at that time. You were both badasses, and my favorite part was when Janine called Scarborough a propagandist. I looked it up in celebration of your show's birthday. Happy birthday, MR. You and Janine were... thank you very much. Congressional baseball fan. As we prepare to enter the offseason, it's important that we keep the stove hot and Americans engaged with the election tomorrow. I feel the slogan, Blue Wave has lost speed. Please feel free to use the much more engaging bases loaded. Play ball, America. Attorney Andrew, very happy that Sam finally took my advice to do a Dumb Dumb Left show as I have been pushing for at least 2 years. Remember, I am an ideas man. I'm also very humble. To Emma's question about Medicare for all, it's a win-win. Let's say your employer pockets the full savings from no longer having to pay for your private insurance directly. Under Bernie's bill, your insurance will be better under Medicare for all because you'll be able to pick your doctor. You will have no deductibles. You will have no copays, and dental and vision will be covered. Though it's unlikely for all employers to simultaneously sit on the windfall forever, especially smallish businesses. Yes, but presumably the argument is that she's making is that, yes, my Medicare for all will be cheaper, but what will the money that I paid for all those deductibles and co-payments be relative to the taxes that will be increased to pay for that Medicare for all for that individual? That's the question. And I mean, it's a legitimate question, but I think there are definitely fixes for it. None of this stuff is, can't know how that employer will react, and it's very contextualized. Like I say, if there's two people in that same business, or they're going to have to step up because the other person's going to offer some of that money to their employees.
Yeah, they're still going to have to compete in various ways for workers, right? And this is another thing I just thought of. I know not everyone's in a union, but healthcare is such a big part of union negotiations right now. And if that were taken off the table, they could focus more on negotiating salaries and control and stuff like that.
Communist Dog, can super engineer Matt come up with a jingle for election day? We should get some just stock like we do a package. Hugo Ball, everybody's on the money with Chicago-style politics. Primarily, it means downward distribution of power through wards and ward bosses who can be used to control electorates through contracts and jobs. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Shane from Philly.
Shane from Philly. What's on your mind?
I wanted to piggyback off of what you were talking about earlier with Nancy Pelosi and how demonization of her is kind of a vestige of old homophobia associated with San Francisco. I think that a big problem with the way most Americans view politics today is that we're blinded by this American exceptionalism and in short, really not as aware to global trends as I think we should be. And I think a really great example of that is Roy Moore and the way that he's kind of brought a set we used to think of as kind of just ideas specific to Russia maybe and Ukraine and some other places where they've had influence, but like the idea that George Soros is sexual in some nature is very much a component of fascism itself. And this manifesto from this extremist holy war guy, it's I feel like we have to pay more attention to the way this is all one story on almost every level of detail. And I think that will really help our messaging in the future, too, and just to get a clear vision of what a fucking hellscape we're in. So thanks for the time, and have a good one.
Thanks, Shane. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Hello, Josh from Chicago. What's on your mind?
I'm canvassing right now, by the way. I'm taking a little break from canvassing, so I just want to say that I'm being a good patriotic citizen.
I know some people are going to be doing voter protection tomorrow, and if you are, call in tomorrow. We're gonna be talking to Sean McKelvey in the first part of the show, and then we'll just open it up, and we'll probably do a short one as people are out there, and then return later for the night. But how's it going? Where are you canvassing, Josh?
Bay Ridge. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Gravesend. I'm trying to flip Marty Golden's seat. Marty Golden is a racist asshole who probably should be in jail. But Andrew Gennardis is the candidate.
It's not very civil, Josh.
How's it looking out there, Josh?
pretty good. I think they have a good shot. I think Golden has largely gotten in because there hasn't been much pressure to him.
Yep.
And I think now there's a real serious challenger, and his past has come to light in a way that hasn't before. And also this challenger is actually very progressive, and people now know the difference between a Democrat and a Republican because Gennardis is campaigning on things like New York Health Act and rent control and, things that would signify to the average voter, oh, yeah, there's a difference. There's something I can do by voting.
That's good.
So,
all right, Josh, appreciate the update.
Can I talk quickly about two races?
Yeah.
You guys remember that wet blanket John Ossoff?
Yep.
So Lucy McBath has a real chance in that district against Karen Handel. I think largely because she's campaigning on something, which is gun control.
Yep.
And the polling is looking pretty good to flip that.
She lost her child, right?
Yes.
I can't remember the circumstances.
Yeah, she lost her child.
But it was gun violence, right?
Yeah, it was gun violence. So polling is looking good on that. It shows that if you run on something besides the deficit, you might actually be able to flip voters. Also, Jess King in Pennsylvania, I was phone banking for her earlier or yesterday. I think she has a real shot. She's flipping these normal Republican voters who have now woken up to the fact that Republicans want to rob them of their social safety net. And I think, especially with the dairy farm crisis that's going on, with massive corporations taking over sort of mom and pop or small dairy farms, I think she's speaking to that, and she has a really good shot at flipping that. And also Liz Watson in District 9 in Indiana, another very progressive candidate. And she, not only is she running on Medicare for All, but she's also not playing into some racial dog whistling that I think some candidates in swing districts like to do, especially when it comes to immigration. And so if the young voters come out in Indiana, if you are an IU student or a student in Indiana and can vote in that district, please do, because that actually could make a difference and flip it. So are you guys doing a show tomorrow afternoon?
We're doing one at noon for a little bit, and then we'll be back at around 8-ish.
Okay, I'll call in and talk about the McCaskill race tomorrow, because I'm a former Missouri resident, so I can speak to some things that are going on.
Very cosmopolitan. Appreciate the call, buddy. Calling from a 585 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Annie. I'm calling from Canandaigua, New York. How's it going?
Good. How you doing, Annie?
Good. So I just wanted a quick talk about strategy. I hate to say it, but for 2020, we have to play a pretty long game before we get there. But so I'm really big for Bernie. I did all the things that you need to do to try and get somebody elected for Bernie, and it didn't work out. But I think that in a lot of ways, we're really missing the boat if we don't throw ourselves completely in with Elizabeth Warren. And hear me out. I know there is a cultural zeitgeist of Democratic women that we would ignore to our peril. We're whistling past the graveyard by not trying to put somebody in that is, and I'm sorry to say, has at least the qualification of being, outwardly being female, and being, feminine. Okay. And what the first gatekeeper, the first hurdle to get over is going to be is getting those women, a very large and vocal amount of women, behind us and in a coalition for somebody who is very far to the left, like Elizabeth Warren, comparatively to the people that they will choose if we don't choose someone they've already been on board with.
All right, Annie,
like
let me do this.
Harris.
Let me do this.
So
let me just do this. Let's table this conversation right until after tomorrow, and I'll tell you why. Not just because there's an election tomorrow, that precedes, but let me just finish.
Right.
We will see tomorrow I think tomorrow is going to show just the strength of women in terms of their voting power. And I suspect that the argument that you're making is going to be very similar to the argument that Elizabeth Warren is literally going to make to Bernie Sanders, or is going to try and present, because and I think, we will have a better sense of this, after the election tomorrow.
I know, and I agree, but this is kind of more of a prediction, and I really want to get out in front of this by saying, at least to the MR audience, because we're a tight knit group. If you think that we should go full bear against against a media that is 100% against Bernie Sanders, even though he is the most popular and well-liked politician of our time, hands down, across the board, everybody likes the guy. They are the gatekeepers to money and to distribution of his message. And honestly, they've already sort of made nicey with Elizabeth Warren. And if we don't pick somebody that they've already been okay with, in a way, guess who's going to get the money? It's going to go to a corporate, hack like Cory Booker. No offense to Cory Booker, but he is kind of hacky. Or Kamala Harris.
I think this is
they're not letting her
right,
in.
Right. I understand your argument,
Right,
and let's
okay.
let's have it in the coming weeks. Appreciate the call, though.
One point. Real quick.
Let's have it after the midterms, and incidentally, go fuck yourself.
The mainstream media tried the same thing with Corbyn, and it didn't work.
Bernie 2020. I think the first. Well, whatever. We're not going to talk.
Right. Calling from a 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? We got 22 callers on the line. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad I got. Is it me?
Yeah.
Is it Ty?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello.
This is Esteban from Baltimore.
Esteban from Baltimore. What's on your mind?
Oh, man. So many things. I mean, I've been on for so long. But one more thing I just want to suggest, and as a possible guest to you, and I'll try to email you, and I actually don't know the gentleman's name, but it's a professor from Morgan State University Law School, I believe, here in Baltimore. And it's a study regarding kind of the distribution of demographically in Baltimore. And if you look at it on a map, it's something that's kind of known as a black butterfly and a white, a white line or something. There's sort of two sides of Baltimore that are predominantly or more African American, more poor. I guess my big point is, like, it sort of looks at the intersectionality of education, healthcare, poverty, housing, and it seems to all kind of rest on housing and racial discrimination to a large degree. But there's just this very distinct pattern, in these areas. People don't have cars.
This guest that you're talking
or they
about.
rely on their cars.
Okay. Bad
bad public transportation.
Esteban.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
The guest that you're talking about, they did this report, or they've commented on it?
I believe it's a paper that this professor wrote, and the way I got to it, well, anyway, it was related to lawsuits that were being against this company that took advantage of the fact that people in these areas are so reliant on their cars, and at the same time are extremely poor. So if the car breaks down, they don't have the option of another. They're at the mercy of whatever auto shop is kind of accessible to them near where they are. And so they were just, from my understanding, very predatory in their practices. And there was I think it was a successful kind of a lawsuit against it. It kind of made me think of the mass torch kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm definitely going to send it to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, man.
And thank you so much for all you guys do.
Thank you. Go vote. All right, we got time for one or two more calls. Sorry, folks, we got 22 callers on the phone, on the line right now. If you have been hanging on the phone for less than 45 minutes to an hour, we will not get to you. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, this is Ryan outside of Philly. Apparently, actually in Mindy's district, where we have this damn Fed that's going to win again, unfortunately.
All right. Well, maybe you and Mindy should have gotten together and done something about this.
Sorry.
Maybe you and Mindy should have gotten together and done something about this.
Tweeting's not enough.
Oh, I know. I wish. So we talk a lot about voting rights and stuff. Is there any reason you would say that anyone should not be allowed to vote? Because for me, I would probably argue that there's no reason we should even have an age restriction on 18. Because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Lower it to 16.
Yeah, I think I would lower it to 17. I think you want seniors in high school, whatever that is. I think you want seniors in high school to vote. Because if seniors in high school are voting, that is going to basically infect the rest of the high school with this notion of like, it's going to make them more aware. Would I not want younger kids to vote? I mean, I don't know. I guess they would vote. I just think it would be.
I mean, I guess because the only thing is that you'd say that they'd probably go to vote where their family is.
Well,
but already we have so many people that are stupid that are uninformed anyway.
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem like kids. Kids would probably vote as their parents do. The problem is that you would probably get a disproportion of wealthy kids being able to vote as opposed to kids,
that's probably
lower incomes.
fair.
And so that's what strikes me. I mean, it would probably be a wash if everybody, could vote just as easily as everybody else. But I don't think there's something, and I also, frankly, I think, the fact is that kids' brains have not developed, and it's not that I'm worried that I mean, just physiologically, there are certain, and I
Jordan
think
fucking Peterson.
part of the way that that you communicate that to kids. Is that they don't have the same responsibilities as adults. And, so like when a kid says like, why can't I drink a glass of bourbon tonight, Dad? It's because your brain have not developed in the same way and it will cause more physiological damage.
Wow, it's like a conversation that's about to take place in 10 years from now with you and Saul. It's just happening now.
Oh,
I love that. Dad, why can't I have if your kid approaches you as a teenager with like, why can't I enjoy a nice nightcap of bourbon? Maybe you should let them have it.
A tiny one. I'll water one down for you. But I mean, that's the only reason. But I think beyond that, I'm with you. But I would say 17.
I mean, I would certainly say everyone should be, guaranteed the right to vote anyway. But,
All right. Appreciate the call.
Billionaires shouldn't be allowed to vote.
No, yeah. Billionaires, you can't vote. You already got too much power.
Take your choice. Campaign contributions or vote. Pick your speech.
No, you can't do those either.
All right.
Yeah, you just can't do anything. You're just going to be killed.
You can go into the cell right here.
Right. You can watch.
Jamie, 0 or 6? 0 or 6?
Huh?
0 or 6?
6.
Okay. Final call of the day is from a 269 area code as opposed to a 20 something area code. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
This is Lawrence calling from Michigan.
Lawrence from Michigan. What's on your mind?
As a black progressive, I find it difficult to communicate with a lot of my friends who are liberal about issues that we should all agree on. I don't understand where the roadblock is with some of my constituents. And I wanted to understand, and I wanted to ask, why is it that when certain issues are brought up, like criminal justice reform, and people bring up Chicago, like it's like that's the only place that black people live, but people are not talking about the cross sections of gun control, of talking about how places that are full of corruption, how they fundamentally disenfranchise black people, not just black people, but women and other people of color. I don't understand where the disconnect is coming from when I'm talking to other liberals about these issues. The latest conversation that I had was about right wing terrorism, and the response that I got from some of the people that I was talking to were saying that black people commit more gun violence per capita if you look at crime and violence statistics online. And I wasn't understanding where they were getting this information from. So I was just trying to see if y'all could share some light on that issue.
So wait, I'm unclear what you're asking. You're saying that you had a conversation. You were talking about right wing terrorism, and we should just say, like, let me just define that a little bit more specifically. In 2009, the Department of Homeland Security said that there is a growing problem with domestic terrorism from the right, from like sovereign citizens and these type of organizations. There was a lot of pushback from Republicans against that report. They dropped that report. The FBI has basically, not totally, but has completely drained resources from that pursuit because of the Trump administration. So when you're talking about that right-wing terrorism, you're talking about like the shooter, or like, we've had probably, almost been a dozen people in the past month who have been arrested for bombing plots. I know we had some in, I think it was Kansas, who were arraigned, who tried to use on their defense and their sentencing that Trump had they had Trump syndrome or whatever it was. So wait, so you're saying
they got really successful.
So you bring that up with some of your friends, presumably white friends, and they say that's not a problem because there's violence in Chicago?
Basically the argument that ends up happening is that they'll pull up some statistics saying that if you look at murders in just murders in general in the United States, that people of color commit more murders. And
per capita, you're saying?
Per capita. And I find it difficult to convey to them that like these are people who are liberal, but they're strong Second Amendment standing people, which I don't.
Well,
which
I mean, I don't know what they're trying to argue. I mean,
are you arguing for more gun control?
It's conceivable to me that there may be that there may be. It's conceivable to me. It's per capita. There may be rates of gun violence that are higher amongst African Americans. It's conceivable. There's a lot of that violence, can be a function of, like in Chicago, a lot of that violence is, essentially drugs. And it is gang related. And that is a function of our drug laws and keeping people in close quarters with poverty and sort of systemic suppression of people. But if I was going to argue about, let's say, stronger gun safety laws, I would simply remind people that on any given day, there are multiple toddlers who are shot or shoot someone with a gun. That's a problem.
Once a week.
It's more than once a week. There's no doubt it's more than once a week in this country. I would also say that providing, limiting the access of hardcore weapons will undoubtedly, if you do it nationally, will undoubtedly lower the amount of gun killings that you have across the board. We've seen that in Australia. I mean, it's harder, obviously, if you can get if you're selling, if people can cross the state lines and get guns easier, or leave Chicago and get guns easier, I mean that sort of there's a problem there. But I can't explain why your friends respond the way they do.
They're racist.
Yeah,
It
I
sounds
mean,
like you need to
it
get some
sounds
better
like it.
friends.
I didn't want to. I liked right. There was a way of soft pedaling that. Your friends are terrible.
Here's a thing you could also bring up to them, which is that the Second Amendment, as it currently stands, does not apply equally to everyone. Right? We've all seen this.
It doesn't apply equally to black people at all. Like,
No.
I definitely agree with that.
When a 12-year-old child can get shot by the cops for holding a toy, that's not equality. So if we want to start from that point, maybe it could help us have a more sensible read on gun control that doesn't assume that everyone currently has the right to buy guns. And personally, I'd rather do it without expanding the reach of the police state and the carceral state, because I think that's something that's always going to fall disproportionately on poorer people and on people of color. But there are certainly things you can do at the level of the manufacturers and the people making tons and tons of money off of this.
Agree. Target the manufacturers and Philando Castile.
Here is an example. Appreciate the call, Lawrence. Thanks for listening. Here,
Thanks, y'all.
Here is a Georgia gun owners is now concerned about these black guys walking around, I guess, with weapons. They posted a bunch of pictures of guys walking around with guns.
I know a Chonga was on him.
I mean, that's a little bit hypocritical, right? Like,
just a bit. You think of Georgia gun owners. It doesn't say Georgia white gun owners or Georgia's
Right.
Republican gun owners. It's
implied.
You would think.
I thought you guys preferred when we did subtext.
You would think that they would have an issue. I down in South Carolina, it was pretty nuts. Like almost, there was a bunch of buildings where they have just a sign, no concealed handguns in there.
How many times did somebody ask you if you were from out of town? Boy.
Everybody's out of town.
Okay. Oh, because where was it again?
Charleston.
Oh, I guess right.
That's
a real tourist place.
It looked like it looked like the whole place was built for tourists. All right, folks, we're out of time in terms of calls. I apologize. Still 8 on the phone. Do a bunch of IMs. Reverb. Can't wait to see Sam drunk tomorrow. Sam, you make politics so sexy. Thank you very much. I will be drunk tomorrow. That is the plan. Be silly. It's time for Occam's razor approach to Republican thinking. They don't like Nancy Pelosi because she's an older woman. So gross, right? Got to think reptile brain.
There's also a Hillary thing where she's just been in the spotlight or in the targets for so long.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
I think it's just like it will be anyone. Anybody who goes into that position, some people might be easier than others. Like they tried to do it with Harry Reid. Like Rush Limbaugh used to call him Dirty Harry. Then it was like Dingy Harry. Called him Dingy Harry. And it was just like, what? I don't even get what you're trying. Like I can't even see what you're trying to, because he would just come on TV.
Isn't Dirty Harry Clint Eastwood?
Yeah. And this is called him Dingy Harry, as if like you don't look at Harry Reid and go, dingy. That is what? I don't quite get it. They couldn't touch him. And part of it was because he's an old white guy. And so they didn't have they just don't have as much in their arsenal to go after someone like that. Not in color. There's a reason why Gillum and Jealous were 10 points down in their primary polls prior to the vote, but ended up winning their races. Everyone should keep that in mind. And most polling uses a likely voter model. All right, well, I hope so. Not in color. I know you
Gotta
said
go
this
to
the other day.
Maryland.
Glasses goal. Embarrassment to journalism. Axios aired their full Trump interview yesterday. Came complete with credits, outtakes, clips to drive home how contrived and worthless it was.
Yeah, what is that show anyway? Is it just like
I don't know.
Mild-mannered British dudes pitching softball questions at Trump?
That's how we're doing news now. That's how we're doing the news.
Human Brian, who writes far left policy? Any idea how one would join those conversations? read the Jacobin, look at, go join the DSA,
But I
guess.
mean, literally writing policy. I mean, yeah, there's some people in DSA, but Marissa Baradaran, who's on my show a lot, writes specific policy for Warren and for Gillibrand. But I mean, that's something they really need to build out in general.
Yeah, far left policy is sort of an oxymoron right now, but maybe someday it won't be.
Sudartha, what do y'all see as the defining positions that differentiate between the left and liberals?
Universal versus targeted programs and democratizing the economy beyond just redistribution.
And then I would also say there's like a tactical differences too on some level.
Cool and not cool.
I think,
whack as fuck versus awesome.
I think the left has embraced all different kinds of tactics through the years. Like, there are people who embrace electoralism. There are people who think that it sucks. There are people who think we need to do all of those things at once. I think Michael really said it in terms of economic democracy. And here's one good example. Liberals want to help the poor, right? They want to redistribute some goods and some services to help the poor have slightly better lives. Leftists want to eliminate class society. We don't want there to be poor people to help. So it's like a fundamental restructuring, I think, versus technocratic tinkering.
Well, I think, though, that if you want to look at the left broadly, I think the idea is universality of policy versus targeted welfare state. And so you would have free college as opposed to means tested. You would have, or one where you would have to work the money off. You'd have a free college option.
You should make it.
You'd have Medicare for all as opposed to just Medicare or Medicaid.
That covers perfectly social democratic versus liberal, but actually where these terms become relevant, but the more like democratic socialist part would be things like Mondragon in Spain. Like, there actually needs to be large parts of the economy, or what they were proposing to do in Sweden in the 70s, that come under much broader conceptions of public and worker ownership. And that isn't necessarily part of, necessarily a social democratic case, because social democratic, you're more just focused on serious redistribution, which is great, but there's a distinction there.
Yeah, there are many different kinds of leftists too. So,
well, yes, but I'm saying as you cross the spectrum, right? Yeah. And you go from liberal to left. I think,
liberal,
are
social
democrats liberals or leftists?
I think they're left of liberals. Yeah.
Said your mom.
I got to think about that.
Yeah, I think so. They're
you guys should all think about that. Make podcasts.
Universality is.
You should totally podcast about it.
I think one more important.
You know what you should do? You should do a podcast about that, and then space and other stuff and whatever, and we will run the fucking world.
I want to abolish profits. Just throwing that out there.
You should do a podcast about that.
Spocko. Sam, could you talk more about the GOP? We were hacked by Democrat strategy Kemp is using. If close races show hacking, but no evidence who it's from, what happens? Who investigates? Nobody. There is no apparatus to deal with any of this. Right. And on some level, until you make voting a federal right, there's no mechanism in which to create an apparatus. All you have is the FBI saying to the Secretary of State of this, I just want you to know, we noticed some activity. It's a real problem. Jared from Connecticut. Hey, MR Crew, can I get a shofar for my dad? He'll be working as a poll protection legal aid in Southeast Connecticut all day. Sure, here we go. He's spending all day cramming legal text, relevant law, like he's back at Connecticut College. He gave me my basis in decent politics and shows what it's like. Shows like yours have focused my beliefs. Thank you, everyone. Insight. Please, everyone, vote. Left is best. All right, we'll do 3 more IMs. Guidanara. My wife and I purchased a subscription to Hunt to Kill. It was great fun. We sorted through the... Wait a second. Putting ATM card to one
Nice.
side, piling the torn Social Security manifesto pieces to the other. We listened to the recordings of the nasally semi-hebridic whine. Darn, I'm at work. What was the victim's name? Oh, okay. I don't know where that was going. That seems
It's either a cuck or Seth
Right.
Rich or both.
Proletarian.
And I
Ryan Grimm
support
crunched
all of
those
that.
numbers and found if you remove white evangelicals, even the white non-college educated folks break for the Dems. Interesting. Wow.
Gotta love those evangelicals.
A penny for your thoughts. I all want to express support for the caller Liz from last Thursday. Her thoughtful and respectful comments expressed the frustration I've also had with Jamie's somewhat formulaic anti-capitalism response that can feel like a hammer that sees every problem as a nail. I very much appreciate you, Jamie, your smarts, and the fact that you bring a woman's perspective and energy. I also appreciate practical the DSA info you bring. However, the constant anti-capitalist trope often lacks the deep and more nuanced thinking I count on from MR. Thanks to all five of you. Truly don't know what to do without MR in this time of dangerous and rising fascism. We'll have a lot of time to respond to that tomorrow night as we have.
But not too much time,
I
because
think-
we shouldn't go that late tomorrow night. I mean,
Really?
seriously, Jesus Christ, you're not already anticipating a big late night, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Because look, I mean, if they win, that's great, and then we leave early. And if they lose, ooh, that's a bummer. We should all go our separate ways and drink by ourselves. Goodbye.
The solution is to just let me talk for longer, and then the nuance will really come out.
There you go, folks. Instant classic. Sam, do you, the Daily Beast, had an article yesterday pointing out that in modern times when a president loses the House in midterm, they win re-election. Do you think this trend continues? I hope not.
I think people overlook at trends like this, especially when they're spaced out over years and the actual conditions change so much. I mean,
Bush won his midterm elections and he got reelected too. I mean,
the sample size and the sample size isn't big enough and the conditions change too much.
Bartlett, 68. My next door neighbor is stereotypical Charlottesville alt-right tiki torch marcher. He flies a Gadsden flag and a Kekistan flag. Jesus. He really got dressed up for the Trump rally yesterday, draped his car with those flags before going. His brother, who lives across the street, was involved in coding for the 3D printer company. I keep wondering what it was like to watch Germany change from Weimar to Nazi in the 30s, and if that's happening here from a societal point of view, it's similar. Well, we'll tell you after. We'll tell you in a couple of years. Two more. Bro Mansley, are y'all hiring? Don't think so, but send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Sean is the final IM of the day. In a Dennis Miller voice, Hunter Killer, where you should pretend to solve a crime, shouldn't be confused with Hunter Killer, where you pretend to be Videla succeeding to overthrow Isabel Perón. Bop, bop, bop. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years, while I shifted in and out of gear. Somehow